Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is an American fantasy drama television series created by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss for HBO. It is an adaptation of A Song of Ice and Fire, George R.R. Martin's series of fantasy novels, the first of which is A Game of Thrones. The show was both produced and filmed in Belfast and elsewhere in the United Kingdom. Filming locations also included Canada, Croatia, Iceland, Malta, Morocco, and Spain. The series premiered on HBO in the United States on April 17, 2011, and concluded on May 19, 2019, with 73 episodes broadcast over 8 seasons. Set on the fictional continents of Westeros and Essos, Game of Thrones has several plots and a large ensemble cast and follows several story arcs. One arc is about the Iron Throne of the Seven Kingdoms and follows a web of alliances and conflicts among the noble dynasties either vying to claim the throne or fighting for independence from it. Another focuses on the last descendant of the realm's deposed ruling dynasty, who has been exiled and is plotting a return to the throne, while another story arc follows the Night's Watch, a brotherhood defending the realm against the fierce peoples and legendary creatures of the North. Game of Thrones attracted a record viewership on HBO and has a broad, active, and international fanbase. It was acclaimed by critics for its acting, complex characters, story, scope, and production values, although its frequent use of nudity and violence, including sexual violence, was criticized. The series received 58 Primetime Emmy Awards, the most by a drama series, including Outstanding Drama Series in 2015. 2016, 2018, 2019. Its other awards and nominations include 3 Hugo Awards for Best Dramatic Presentation, 2012 to 2014, a 2011 Peabody Award, and 5 nominations for the Golden Globe Award for Best Television Series, Drama, 2012 and 2015 to 2018. In 2019, the show's final season established a new record for most Emmy nominations received in the same year by any regular series with 32, breaking the 25-years-long record of 26 nominations established by Night Blue in 1994. It also established Game of Thrones as the drama series with the most overall Emmy nominations, with a total of 161. Of the ensemble cast, Peter Dinklage has won 4 Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series, 2011, 2015, 2018, and 2019, and the Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actor, Series, Miniseries or Television Film, 2012, for his performance as Tyrion Lannister. Alfie Allen, Gwendolyn Christie, Emilia Clarke, Nicolaj Coster-Waldau, Lena Headey, Kit Harington, Sophie Turner, Diana Rigg, Karis Van Houten, Max von Sydow, and Maisie Williams have also received Primetime Emmy Award nominations for their performances. Background. Setting. Game of Thrones is roughly based on the storylines of A Song of Ice and Fire, set in the fictional Seven Kingdoms of Westeros and the continent of Essos. The series chronicles the violent dynastic struggles among the realm's noble families for the Iron Throne, while other families fight for independence from it. It opens with additional threats in the icy north and Essos in the east. Showrunner David Benioff jokingly suggested The Sopranos in Middle-earth as Game of Thrones tagline, referring to its intrigue-filled plot and dark tone in a fantasy setting of magic and dragons. In a 2012 study, out of 40 recent television drama shows, Game of Thrones ranked second in deaths per episode, averaging 14 deaths. Themes. The series is generally praised for what is perceived as a sort of medieval realism. George R.R. Martin set out to make the story feel more like historical fiction than contemporary fantasy, with less emphasis on magic and sorcery and more on battles, political intrigue, and the characters, believing that magic should be used moderately in the epic fantasy genre. Martin has stated that the true horrors of human history derive not from orcs and dark lords, but from ourselves. A common theme in the fantasy genre is the battle between good and evil, which Martin says does not mirror the real world. Just like people's capacity for good and for evil in real life, Martin explores the questions of redemption and character change. The series allows the audience to view different characters from their perspective, unlike in many other fantasies, and thus the supposed villains can provide their side of the story. Benioff said, "George brought a measure of harsh realism to high fantasy. He introduced gray tones into a black and white universe." In early seasons, under the influence of the A Song of Ice and Fire books, main characters were regularly killed off, and this was credited with developing tension among viewers. In later seasons, critics pointed out that certain characters had developed plot armor to survive in unlikely circumstances, and attributed this to Game of Thrones deviating from the novels to become more of a traditional television series. The series also reflects the substantial death rates in war. Inspirations and derivations. Although the first season closely follows the events of the first novel, later seasons have made significant changes. According to David Benioff, the series is about adapting the series as a whole and following the map George laid out for us and hitting the major milestones, but not necessarily each of the stops along the way. The novels and their adaptations base aspects of their settings, characters, and plot on events in European history. Most of Westeros is reminiscent of high medieval Europe, from lands and cultures, to the palace intrigue, feudal system, castles, and knightly tournaments. A principal inspiration for the novels is the English Wars of the Roses, 1455 to 1485, between the houses of Lancaster and York, reflected in Martin's houses of Lannister and Stark. The scheming Cersei Lannister evokes Isabella, the she-wolf of France, 1295 to 1358. She and her family, as portrayed in Maurice Drune's historical novel series, The Accursed Kings, were a main inspiration of Martin's. Other historical antecedents of series elements include Hadrian's Wall, which becomes Martin's Wall, the Roman Empire, and the legend of Atlantis, ancient Valyria, Byzantine Greek fire, wildfire, Icelandic sagas of the Viking Age, the Ironborn, the Mongol hordes, the Dothraki, the Hundred Years' War, and the Italian Renaissance. The series' popularity has been attributed, in part, to Martin's skill at fusing these elements into a seamless, credible version of alternate history. Martin acknowledges, "I take history, and I file off the serial numbers and I turn it up to 11. Cast and characters. Game of Thrones has an ensemble cast estimated to be the largest on television. During its third season, 257 cast names were recorded. In 2014, several actor contracts were renegotiated to include a seventh season option, with raises which reportedly made them among the highest paid performers on cable television. In 2016, several actor contracts were again renegotiated, reportedly increasing the salary of 5 of the main cast members to $1 million per episode for the last 2 seasons, which would make them the highest paid actors on television. The main cast is listed below. Lord Eddard Ned Stark, Sean Bean, is the head of House Stark, whose members are involved in plotlines throughout most of the series. He and his wife, Catelyn Tully, Michelle Fairley, have 5 children: Robb, Richard Madden, the eldest, followed by Sansa, Sophie Turner, Arya, Maisie Williams, Bran, Isaac Hempstead Wright, and Rickon, Art Parkinson. Ned's illegitimate son Jon Snow, Kit Harington, and his friend Samwell Tarly, John Bradley, serve in the Night's Watch under Lord Commander Jalur Mormont, James Cosmo. The wildlings living north of the Wall include the young Gilly, Hannah Murray, and the warriors Dormund Giantsbane, Christopher Hivju, and Grit, Rose Leslie. Others associated with House Stark include Ned's ward Ian Greyjoy, Alfie Allen, his vassal Roose Bolton, Michael Mslehatton, and Bolton's bastard son Ramsay Snow, Ewan Rion. Robb falls in love with the healer Talisa Magier, Una Chaplin, and Arya befriends the blacksmith's apprentice Gendry, Joe Dempsey, and the assassin Jaqen Tom Laskaiha. The tall warrior Brienne of Tarth, Gwendolyn Christie, serves Catelyn and, later, Sansa. In King's Landing, the capital, Ned's friend King Robert Baratheon, Mark Hattie, shares a loveless marriage with Cersei Lannister, Lena Headey, who has taken her twin brother, the Kingslayer Sir Jaime Lannister, Nicolaj Coster-Waldau, as her lover. She loathes her younger brother, the dwarf Tyrion Lannister, Peter Dinklage, who is attended by his mistress Shay, Cybele Killy, and the Cesart Brown, Jerome Flynn. Cersei's father is Lord Tywin Lannister, Charles Dance, and she also has two young sons, Joffrey, Jack Gleeson, and Tommen, Dean Charles Chapman. Joffrey is guarded by the scar-faced warrior Sansa the Hound Clegane, Rory McCann. The King's small council of advisors includes the crafty master of coin Lord Petter Littlefinger Baelish, Aidan Gillen, and the eunuch spymaster Lord Varys, Kynleth Hill. Robert's brother Stannis Baratheon, Stephen Delane, is advised by foreign priestess Melisandre, Caris Van Houten, and former smuggler Sir Davos Seaworth, Liam Cunningham. The wealthy Tyrell family is represented at court by Marjorie Tyrell, Natalie Dormer. The High Sparrow, Jonathan Pryce, is the capital's religious leader. In the southern principality of Dorne, Ellaria Sand, Indira Varma, seeks vengeance against the Lannisters. Across the narrow sea, siblings Viserys, Harry Lloyd, and Daenerys Targaryen, Emilia Clarke, the exiled children of the last king of the original ruling dynasty, who was overthrown by Robert Baratheon, are running for their lives and trying to win back the throne. Daenerys marries Godrigo, Jason Momoa, the leader of the nomadic Dothraki. Her retinue includes the exiled knight Ser Jorah Mormont, Ian Glenn, her aide Missandei, Natalie Emanuel, the Caesar Draenys, Michiel Huisman, and Grey Worm, Jacob Anderson, who leads Daenerys' army of elite eunuch warriors, the Unsullied. Production, conception and development. In January 2006, David Benioff had a phone conversation with George R.R. Martin's literary agent about the books he represented and became interested in A Song of Ice and Fire, as he had been a fan of fantasy fiction when young but had not read the books before. The literary agent then sent Benioff the series' first 4 books. Benioff read a few hundred pages of the first novel, A Game of Thrones, shared his enthusiasm with D.B. Weiss, and suggested that they adapt Martin's novels into a television series. Weiss finished the first novel in maybe 36 hours. They pitched the series to HBO after a 5-hour meeting with Martin, himself a veteran screenwriter, in a restaurant on Santa Monica Boulevard. According to Benioff, they won Martin over with their answer to his question, who is Jon Snow's mother? Before being approached by Benioff and Weiss, Martin had had other meetings with other scriptwriters, most of whom wanted to adapt the series as a feature film. Martin, however, deemed it unfilmable and impossible to be done as a feature film, stating that the size of one of his novels is as long as The Lord of the Rings, which had been adapted as 3 feature films. Similarly, Benioff also said that it would be impossible to turn the novels into a feature film as the scale of the novels is too big for a feature film, and dozens of characters would have to be discarded. Benioff added, a fantasy movie of this scope, financed by a major studio, would almost certainly need a PG-13 rating. That means no sex, no blood, no profanity. Fuck that. Martin himself was pleased with the suggestion that they adapt it as an HBO series, saying that he never imagined it anywhere else. I knew it couldn't be done as a network television series. It's too adult. The level of sex and violence would never have gone through. The series began development in January 2007. HBO acquired the television rights to the novels, with Benioff and Weiss as its executive producers, and Martin as a co-executive producer. The intention was for each novel to yield a season's worth of episodes. Initially, Martin would write 1 episode per season while Benioff and Weiss would write the rest of the episodes. Jane Espenson and Brian Cogman were later added to write 1 episode apiece the first season. The first and second drafts of the pilot script by Benioff and Weiss were submitted in August 2007 and June 2008, respectively. Although HBO liked both drafts, a pilot was not ordered until November 2008. The 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild of America strike may have delayed the process. The pilot episode, Winter is Coming, was first shot in 2009. After a poor reception in a private viewing, HBO demanded an extensive reshoot, about 90% of the episode, with cast and directorial changes. The pilot reportedly cost HBO $5 to $10 million to produce, while the first season's budget was estimated at $50 to $60 million. In the second season, the series received a 15% budget increase for the climactic battle in Blackwater, which had an $8 million budget. Between 2012 and 2015, the average budget per episode increased from $6 million to at least $8 million. The sixth season budget was over $10 million per episode, for a season total of over $100 million and a series record. Casting. Nina Gold and Robert Stern are the series' primary casting directors. Through a process of auditions and readings, the main cast was assembled. The only exceptions were Peter Dinklage and Sean Bean, whom the writers wanted from the start. They were announced as joining the pilot in 2009. Other actors signed for the pilot were Kit Harington as Jon Snow, Jack Gleeson as Joffrey Baratheon, Harry Lloyd as Viserys Targaryen, and Mark Addy as Robert Baratheon. Addy was, according to showrunners Benioff and Weiss, the easiest actor to cast for the series, due to his audition performance. Some of the characters in the pilot were recast for the first season. Catelyn Stark was initially played by Jennifer L., but the role was recast with Michelle Fairley. Daenerys Targaryen was also recast, with Emilia Clarke replacing Tamsin Merchant. The rest of the first season's cast was filled in the second half of 2009. Although many of the cast returned after the first season, the producers had many new characters to cast for each of the following seasons. Due to the large number of new characters, Benioff and Weiss postponed the introduction of several key characters in the second season and merged several characters into one or assigned plot functions to different characters. Some recurring characters were recast over the years. For example, Gregor Clegane was played by 3 different actors, while Dean Charles Chapman, who played Tommen Baratheon, also played a minor Lannister character. Writing. Game of Thrones used 7 writers in 6 seasons. Series creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the showrunners, write most of the episodes each season. A Song of Ice and Fire author George R.R. Martin wrote 1 episode in each of the first 4 seasons. Martin did not write an episode for the later seasons, since he wanted to focus on completing the 6th novel, The Winds of Winter. Jane Espenson co-wrote 1 first-season episode as a freelance writer. Brian Cogman, initially a script coordinator for the series, was promoted to producer for the 5th season. Cogman, who wrote at least 1 episode for the first 5 seasons, is the only other writer in the writer's room with Benioff and Weiss. Before his promotion, Vanessa Taylor, a writer during the 2nd and 3rd seasons, worked closely with Benioff and Weiss. Dave Hill joined the writing staff for the 5th season after working as an assistant to Benioff and Weiss. Although Martin is not in the writer's room, he reads the script outlines and makes comments. Benioff and Weiss sometimes assign characters to particular writers. For example, Cogman was assigned to Arya Stark for the 4th season. The writers spend several weeks writing a character outline, including what material from the novels to use and the overarching themes. After these individual outlines are complete, they spend another 2 to 3 weeks discussing each main character's individual arc and arranging them episode by episode. A detailed outline is created, with each of the writers working on a portion to create a script for each episode. Cogman, who wrote 2 episodes for the 5th season, took a month and a half to complete both scripts. They are then read by Benioff and Weiss, who make notes, and parts of the script are rewritten. All 10 episodes are written before filming begins, since they are filmed out of order with 2 units in different countries. Benioff and Weiss write each of their episodes together, with one of them writing the first half of the script and the other the second half. After that, they begin with passing the drafts back and forth to make notes and rewrite parts of it. Adaptation schedule and episodes. After Game of Thrones began outpacing the published novels in the 6th season, the series was based on a plot outline of the future novels provided by Martin and original content. In April 2016, the showrunner's plan was to shoot 13 more episodes after the 6th season, 7 episodes in the 7th season and 6 episodes in the 8th. Later that month, the series was renewed for a 7th season with a 7-episode order. 8 seasons were ordered and filmed, adapting the novels at a rate of about 48 seconds per page for the first 3 seasons. The first 2 seasons adapted one novel each. For the later seasons, its creators see Game of Thrones as an adaptation of A Song of Ice and Fire as a whole rather than the individual novels. This enables them to move events across novels, according to screen adaptation requirements. Filming. Principal photography for the first season was scheduled to begin on July 26, 2010, and the primary location was the Paint Hall Studios in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Exterior scenes in Northern Ireland were filmed at Sandy Brae in the Mourne Mountains, Standing in Firths Dothrak, Castle Ward, Winterfell, Saintfield Estates, the Winterfell Godswood, Towie Forest, outdoor scenes, Castle, the execution site, the Magaramorn Quarry, Castle Black, and Shane's Castle, the tourney grounds. Downcastle in Stirling, Scotland, was also used in the original pilot episode for scenes at Winterfell. The producers initially considered filming the whole series in Scotland, but decided on Northern Ireland because of the availability of studio space. The first season's southern scenes were filmed in Malta, a change in location from the pilot episode's Moroccan sets. The city of Medina was used for King's Landing. Filming was also done at Fort Minol, representing the Sept of Baelor, at the Azure Window on the island of Gozo, the Dothraki wedding site, and at San Anton Palace, Fort Wriothesley, Fort St. Angelo and St. Dominic Monastery, all used for scenes in the Red Keep. Filming of the second season's southern scenes shifted from Malta to Croatia, where the city of Dubrovnik and nearby locations allowed exterior shots of a walled, coastal medieval city. The walls of Dubrovnik and Fort Lovrijenac were used for scenes in King's Landing, though, exteriors of some local buildings, for example, the Red Keep and the Sept of Baelor, are computer-generated. The island of Lochram, the St. Dominic Monastery in the coastal town of Trogir, the Rector's Palace in Dubrovnik, and the Dubak Quarry, a few kilometers east, were used for scenes set in Karth. Scenes set north of the Wall, in the Frostfangs and at the Fist of the First Men, were filmed in November 2011 in Iceland, on the Vatnajökull Glacier near Smirlabjorg, the Svinafellsjökull Glacier near Skaftafell and the Myrdalsjökull Glacier near Vik on Hoftabrekkuithi. Third season production returned to Dubrovnik, with the walls of Dubrovnik, Fort Lovrijenac and nearby locations again used for scenes in King's Landing and the Red Keep. Tristan Arboretum, a new location, is the Garden of the Tyrols in King's Landing. The third season also returned to Morocco, including the city of Essaouira, to film Daenerys scenes in Essos. Dimmuborgir and the Grjótugja cave in Iceland were used as well. One scene, with a live bear, was filmed in Los Angeles. The production used 3 units, Dragon, Wolf and Raven, filming in parallel, 6 directing teams, 257 cast members and 703 crew members. The fourth season returned to Dubrovnik and included new locations, including Diocletian's Palace in Split, Klis Fortress north of Split, Baran Quarry east of Split, the Moser Mountain Range, and Baskavoda further south. Thingvellir National Park in Iceland was used for the fight between Brian and the Hound. Filming took 136 days and ended on November 21, 2013. The fifth season added Seville, Spain, used for scenes of Dorne, as well as Córdoba. The sixth season, which began filming in July 2015, returned to Spain and filmed in Navarra, Guadalajara, Seville, Almería, Girona, and Pensacola. Filming also returned to Dubrovnik, Croatia. Filming of the 7 episodes of Season 7 began on August 31, 2016, at Titanic Studios in Belfast, with other filming in Iceland, Northern Ireland and many locations in Spain, including Seville, Cáceres, Almodóvar del Rio, Santiponce, Zumaia, and Bermeo. The series also filmed in Dubrovnik, which is used for location of King's Landing. Filming continued until the end of February 2017 as necessary to ensure winter weather in some of the European locations. Directing. Each 10-episode season of Game of Thrones has 4 to 6 directors, who usually direct back-to-back episodes. Alan Taylor has directed 7 episodes, the most episodes of the series. Alex Graves, David Nutter, Mark Mylod, and Jeremy Podswa have directed 6 each. Daniel Minahan directed 5 episodes, and Michelle McLaren, Alex Sakharov, and Miguel Sapochnik directed 4 each. McLaren is also the only female director in the entire series run. Brian Kirk directed 3 episodes during the first season, and Tim Van Patten directed the series' first 2 episodes. Neil Marshall directed 2 episodes, both with large battle scenes, Blackwater and The Watchers on the Wall. Other directors have been Jack Binder, David Bejarka, Daniel Sakaim, Michael Slovis, and Matt Sheckman. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss have directed 2 episodes together but only credited 1 each episode, which was determined after a coin toss. Technical aspects. Alex Sakharov was the pilot's cinematographer. The series has had a number of cinematographers, and has received 7 Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Cinematography for a Single Camera Series nominations. Oriel Noriati, Francis Parker, Martin Nicholson, Crispin Green, Tim Porter and Katie Ryland have edited the series for a varying number of episodes. Ryland received a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Single Camera Picture Editing for a Drama Series in 2015. Costumes. Michelle Clapton was costume designer for Game of Thrones' first 5 seasons before she was replaced by April Ferry. Clapton returned to the series as costume designer for the 7th season. The costumes used in the series drew inspiration from a number of sources, such as Japanese and Persian armor. Dothraki dress resembles that of the Bedouin, one was made out of fish skins to resemble dragon scales, and the wildlings wear animal skins like the Inuit. Wildling bone armor is made from molds of actual bones, and is assembled with string and latex resembling catgut. Although the extras who play wildlings and the Night's Watch often wear hats, normal in a cold climate, members of the principal cast usually do not, so viewers can recognize the main characters. Bjork's Alexander McQueen high neckline dresses inspired Marjorie Tyrrell's funnel neck outfit, and prostitutes' dresses are designed for easy removal. All clothing used is aged for 2 weeks so it appears realistic on high-definition television. About 24 wigs are used for the actresses. Made of human hair and up to 61 centimeters, 2 feet, in length, they cost up to $7,000 each and are washed and styled like real hair. Applying the wigs is time-consuming. Amelia Clarke, for example, requires about 2 hours to style her brunette hair with a platinum blonde wig and braids. Other actors, such as Jack Gleason and Sophie Turner, receive frequent hair coloring. For characters such as Daenerys, Clarke, and her Dothraki, their hair, wigs and costumes are processed to appear as if they have not been washed for weeks. Makeup. For the first 3 seasons, Paul Angelin was Game of Thrones' main makeup designer and prosthetic makeup artist with Melissa Lacherstein, Connor O'Sullivan, and Rob Trenton. At the beginning of the 4th season, Angelin's team was replaced by Jane Walker and her crew, composed of Anne McEwen and Barry and Sarah Gower. Visual effects. For the series' large number of visual effects, HBO hired British-based Blue Bolt and Irish-based Screen Scene for Season 1. Most of the environment builds were done as 2.5D projections, giving viewers perspective while keeping the programming from being overwhelming. In 2011, the Season 1 finale, Fire and Blood, was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Special Visual Effects. Because the effects became more complex in subsequent seasons, including CGI creatures, fire, and water, German-based Pixumto became the lead visual effects producer. 9 of its 12 facilities contributed to the project for Season 2, with Stuttgart the lead. Scenes were also produced by British-based Peanut FX, Canadian-based Spin VFX, and US-based Gradient Effects. Valar Morgulis and Valar Dohaeris earned Pixumto Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Special Visual Effects in 2012 and 2013, respectively. For Season 4, HBO added German-based Macavision to the project. The Season 4 finale, The Children, won the 2014 Emmy Award for Visual Effects. Additional producers for Season 4 included Canadian-based Rodeo FX, German-based Scanline VFX and US-based Baked FX. The muscle and wing movements of the adolescent dragons in seasons 4 and 5 were based largely on those of a chicken. Pixometer retained a team of 22 to 30 people which focused solely on visualizing Daenerys Targaryen's dragons, with the average production time per season of 20 to 22 weeks. For the 5th season, HBO added Canadian-based Image Engine and US-based Crazy Horse Effects to its list of main visual effects producers. Sound. Unusual for a television series, the sound team receives a rough cut of a full season and approaches it as a 10-hour feature film. Although seasons 1 and 2 had different sound teams, one team has been in charge of sound since then. For the series' blood and gore sounds, the team often uses a chamois. For dragon screams, mating tortoises and dolphin, seal, lion and bird sounds have been used. Title sequence. The series' title sequence was created by production studio Elastic for HBO. Creative director Angus Wall and his collaborators received the 2011 Primetime Emmy Award for main title design for the sequence, which depicts a three-dimensional map of the series' fictional world. The map is projected on the inside of a sphere which is centrally lit by a small sun in an armillary sphere. As the camera moves across the map, focusing on the locations of the episode's events, clockwork mechanisms intertwine and allow buildings and other structures to emerge from the map. Accompanied by the title music, the names of the principal cast and creative staff appear. The sequence concludes after about 90 seconds with the title card and brief opening credits indicating the episode's writers and director. Its composition changes as the story progresses, with new locations replacing those featuring less prominently or not at all. Music. The music for the series was composed by Ramin Djawadi. The first season's soundtrack, written in about 10 weeks before the premiere, was published by Varaz A. Saraband in June 2011. Soundtrack albums for subsequent seasons have been released, with tracks by The National, The Hold Steady, and Sigur Rós. Djawadi has composed themes for each of the major houses and also for some of the main characters. The themes may evolve over time, as Daenerys Targaryen's theme started small and then became more powerful after each season. Her theme started first with a single instrument, a cello, and Djawadi later incorporated more instruments for it. Language. The Westerosi characters of Game of Thrones speak British accented English, often, but not consistently, with the accent of the English region corresponding to the character's Westerosi region. The Northerner Eddard Stark speaks an actor Sean Bean's native Northern accent, and the Southern Lord Tywin Lannister speaks with a Southern accent, while characters from Dorne speak English with a Spanish accent. Characters foreign to Westeros often have a non-British accent. Although the common language of Westeros is represented as English, the producers charged linguist David J. Peterson with constructing Dothraki and Valyrian languages based on the few words in the novels. Dothraki and Valyrian dialogue is often subtitled in English. It has been reported that during the series these fictional languages have been heard by more people than the Welsh, Irish, and Scots Gaelic languages combined. Effect on location. Game of Thrones is funded by Northern Ireland Screen, a UK government agency financed by InvestNE and the European Regional Development Fund. As of April 2013, Northern Ireland Screen gave the series £9.25 million, $14.37 million, according to government estimates. This has benefited the Northern Ireland economy by £65 million, $100.95 million. Tourism. Ireland has a Game of Thrones themed marketing campaign similar to New Zealand's Tolkien-related advertising. InvestNE and the Northern Ireland Tourist Board also expect the series to generate tourism revenue. According to Arlene Foster, the series has given Northern Ireland the most non-political publicity in its history. The production of Game of Thrones and other TV series also boosted Northern Ireland's creative industries, contributing to an estimated 12.4% growth in arts, entertainment, and recreation jobs between 2008 and 2013, compared with 4.3% in the rest of the UK during the same period. In September 2018, after the filming had finished, HBO announced plans to convert its filming locations in Northern Ireland into tourist attractions to be opened in 2019. Tourism organizations elsewhere reported increases in bookings after their locations appeared in Game of Thrones. In 2012, bookings through laterooms.com increased by 28% in Dubrovnik and 13% in Iceland. The following year, bookings doubled in Ouarzazate, Morocco, the location of Daenerys Season 3 scenes. Game of Thrones has been attributed as a significant factor in the boom of tourism in Iceland that had a strong impact on its economy. Tourist numbers increased by 30% in 2015, followed by another 40% in 2016, with a final figure of 2.4 million visitors expected for 2016, which is around 7 times the population of the country. However, the increase in tourism to Dubrovnik, with Game of Thrones estimated to be responsible for half of its annual increase over many years, had led to concerns on over-tourism and its mayor to impose limits on tourist number in the city. Availability. Broadcast. Game of Thrones is broadcast by HBO in the United States and by its local subsidiaries or other pay television services in other countries, at the same time as in the US or weeks, or months, later. The series broadcast in China on CCTV, begun in 2014, was heavily edited to remove scenes of sex and violence, in accordance with a Chinese practice of censoring Western television series to prevent what the People's Daily called negative effects and hidden security dangers. This resulted in viewer complaints about the incoherence of what remained. Broadcasters carrying Game of Thrones include Showcase in Australia, HBO Canada, Super Ekran, and Showcase in Canada, HBO Latin America in Latin America, Soho and Prime in New Zealand, and Sky Atlantic in the United Kingdom and Ireland. Home media. The 10 episodes of the first season of Game of Thrones were released as a DVD and Blu-ray box set on March 6, 2012. The box set includes extra background and behind-the-scenes material but no deleted scenes, since nearly all the footage shot for the first season was used. The box set sold over 350,000 copies in the first week after release, the largest first-week DVD sales ever for an HBO series, and the series set an HBO series record for digital download sales. A collector's edition box set was released in November 2012, combining the DVD and Blu-ray versions of the first season with the first episode of Season 2. A paperweight in the shape of a dragon egg is included in the set. DVD Blu-ray box sets and digital downloads of the second season became available on February 19, 2013. First-day sales broke HBO records, with 241,000 box sets sold and 355,000 episodes downloaded. The third season was made available for purchase as a digital download on the Australian iTunes Store, parallel to the US premiere, and was released on DVD and Blu-ray in Region 1 on February 18, 2014. The fourth season was released on DVD and Blu-ray on February 17, 2015, and the fifth season on March 15, 2016. The sixth season was released on Blu-ray and DVD on November 15, 2016. The seventh season was released on Blu-ray and DVD on December 12, 2017. Beginning in 2016, HBO began issuing Steelbook Blu-ray sets which include both Dolby True HD 7.1 and Dolby Atmos audio options. In 2018, the first season was released in 4K HDR on Ultra HD Blu-ray. Copyright infringement. Game of Thrones has been widely pirated, primarily outside the US. According to the file-sharing news website Torrent Freak, Game of Thrones has been the most pirated television series since 2012, which means it has held the record for 6 years in a row. Illegal downloads increased to about 7 million in the first quarter of 2015, up 45% from 2014. An unnamed episode was downloaded about 4,280,000 times through public BitTorrent trackers in 2012, roughly equal to its number of broadcast viewers. Piracy rates were particularly high in Australia, and US Ambassador to Australia Jeff Blake issued a statement condemning Australian piracy of the series in 2013. Delays in availability apart from HBO and its affiliates before 2015 and the cost of subscriptions to these services have been cited as causes of the series' illegal distribution. According to Torrent Freak, a subscription to a service for Game of Thrones would cost up to $25 per month in the United States, up to £26 per episode in the UK, and up to $52 per episode in Australia. For combating piracy, HBO said in 2013 that it intended to make its content more widely available within a week of the US premiere, including HBO Go. In 2015, the fifth season was simulcast to 170 countries and to HBO Now users. On April 11, the day before the season premiere, screener copies of the first 4 episodes of the fifth season leaked to a number of file-sharing websites. Within a day of the leak, the files were downloaded over 800,000 times. In 1 week, the illegal downloads reached 32 million, with the season 5 premiere alone, The Wars to Come, pirated 13 million times. The season 5 finale, Mother's Mercy, was the most simultaneously shared file in the history of the BitTorrent file sharing protocol, with over 250,000 simultaneous shares and over 1.5 million downloads in 8 hours. For the 6th season, HBO did not send screeners to the press, to prevent the spread of unlicensed copies and spoilers. Observers, including series director David Picharka and Time Warner CEO Jeff Bix, said that illegal downloads did not hurt the series' prospects. It benefited from buzz and social commentary, and the high piracy rate did not significantly translate to lost subscriptions. According to Polygon, HBO's relaxed attitude towards piracy and the sharing of login credentials amounted to a premium television free-to-play model. At a 2015 Oxford Union debate, series co-creator David Benioff said that he was just glad that people watch the series. Illegally downloaded episodes sometimes interested viewers enough to buy a copy, especially in countries where Game of Thrones was not televised. Co-creator DB Weiss had mixed feelings, saying that the series was expensive to produce and if it doesn't make the money back, then it ceases to exist. However, he was pleased that so many people enjoy the show so much they can't wait to get their hands on it. In 2015, Guinness World Records called Game of Thrones the most pirated television program. IMAX. Beginning on January 23, 2015, the last 2 episodes of Season 4 were shown in 205 IMAX theaters across the United States. Game of Thrones is the first television series shown in this format. The show earned $686,000 at the box office on its opening day and $1.5 million during its opening weekend. The week-long release grossed $1,896,092. Reception and achievements. Game of Thrones was highly anticipated by fans before its premiere, and has become a critical and commercial success. According to The Guardian, by 2014 it was the biggest drama and the most talked about show on television. A 2015 The Hollywood Reporter survey of 2,800 actors, producers, directors, and other industry people named Game of Thrones as their number 4 favorite show. Cultural influence. Although Game of Thrones was dismissed by some critics, its success has been credited with an increase in the popularity of the fantasy genre. On the eve of the 2nd season's premiere, according to CNN, after this weekend, you may be hard-pressed to find someone who isn't a fan of some form of epic fantasy, and cited Ian Bogost as saying that the series continues a trend of successful screen adaptations, beginning with Peter Jackson's 2001 The Lord of the Rings film trilogy and the Harry Potter films, establishing fantasy as a mass-market genre. They are gateway drugs to fantasy fan culture. The success of the show led to a number of fantasy series being commissioned on television, including a retelling of The Lord of the Rings by Amazon Studios. According to Neil Gaiman, whose works Good Omens and American Gods were adapted for TV, Game of Thrones did help change attitudes towards fantasy on television, but mainly it made big budgets for fantasy series more acceptable. The success of the genre had been attributed by writers to a longing for escapism in popular culture, frequent female nudity, and a skill in balancing lighthearted and serious topics, dragons and politics, for example, which provided it with the prestige enjoyed by conventional, top-tier drama series. The series' popularity increased sales of the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, republished in Time editions, which remained at the top of bestseller lists for months. According to the Daily Beast, Game of Thrones was a favorite of sitcom writers and the series has been referred to in other TV series. With other fantasy series, it has been cited as a reason for an increase in the purchase and abandonment of huskies and other wolf-like dogs. Game of Thrones has added to the popular vocabulary. A first-season scene in which Peter Baelish explains his motives, or background, while prostitutes have sex in the background gave rise to the word sexposition for providing exposition with sex and nudity. Dothraki, the series' nomadic horseman, was ranked 4th in a September 2012 Global Language Monitor list of words from television most used on the Internet. In 2012, the media used Game of Thrones as a figure of speech or comparison for situations of intense conflict and deceit, such as U.S. healthcare politics, the Syrian civil war and the ousting of Bozai from the Chinese government. In 2019, singer-songwriter Taylor Swift told Entertainment Weekly that several songs on her 2017 album Reputation were inspired by characters and plots of Game of Thrones. Khaleesi became more popular as a name for baby girls in the United States. In the novels and the TV series, Khaleesi is not a name, but the title of the wife of Akal, warlord, in the Dothraki language, held by Daenerys Targaryen. Game of Thrones has also become a subject of scientific inquiry. In 2016, researchers published a paper analyzing emotional sentiment in online public discourse associated with the unfolding storyline during the 4th season. The analysis purported to be able to distinguish discussions about the storyline of an episode from media critiques or assessments of a specific actor's performance. In 2018, Australian scientists conducted a survival analysis and examined the mortality among 330 important characters during the first 7 seasons of Game of Thrones. In 2019, the Australian branch of the Red Cross conducted a study using international human rights laws to determine which of the Game of Thrones characters had committed the most war crimes during the first 7 seasons of the show. Critical response. General. Game of Thrones, particularly the first 7 seasons, received critical acclaim, although the series' frequent use of nudity and violence has been criticized. Its seasons have appeared on annual best of lists published by The Washington Post, 2011, Time, 2011 and 2012, and The Hollywood Reporter, 2012. The performances of the cast were praised. Peter Dinklage's charming, morally ambiguous, and self-aware Tyrion, who earned him Emmy and Golden Globe awards, was particularly noted. In many ways, Game of Thrones belongs to Dinklage, wrote Mary McNamara of the Los Angeles Times before Tyrion became the series' central figure in Season 2. Several critics highlighted performances by actresses and children. 14-year-old Maisie Williams, noted in the first season for her debut as Arya Stark, was singled out for her Season 2 work with veteran actor Charles Dance, Tywin Lannister. Stephen Dillane has received positive reviews for his performance as Stannis Baratheon, especially in the 5th season, with one critic noting whether you like Stannis or not, you have to admit that Stephen Dillane delivered a monumental performance this season. The series has a rating of 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. First season reviewers said the series had high production values, a fully realized world and compelling characters. According to Variety, there may be no show more profitable to its network than Game of Thrones is to HBO. Fully produced by the pay cabler and already a global phenomenon after only 1 season, the fantasy skein was a gamble that has paid off handsomely. The 2nd season was also well received. Entertainment Weekly praised its vivid, vital, and just plain fun storytelling and, according to The Hollywood Reporter, the series made a strong case for being one of TV's best series. Its seriousness made it the only drama comparable to Mad Men or Breaking Bad. The New York Times gave the series a mixed review, criticizing its number of characters, their lack of complexity and a meandering plot. The 3rd season was extremely well received by critics, with Metacritic giving it a score of 91 out of 100, indicating universal acclaim. The fourth season was similarly praised. Metacritic gave it a score of 94 out of 100 based on 29 reviews, again indicating universal acclaim. The fifth season was also well received by critics and has a score of 91 out of 100, based on 29 reviews, on Metacritic. The sixth season was praised by critics, though not as highly as its predecessors. It has a score of 73 on Metacritic, based on 9 reviews, indicating generally favorable reviews. The seventh season scored 77 out of 100, based on 12 reviews, and was praised for its action sequences and focused central characters, but received criticism for its breakneck pace and plot developments that defied logic. Darren Franich of Entertainment Weekly gave the series a B rating, stating that it was ultimately okay, with both transcendent moments and miserable phases. It was beloved enough to be criticized by everyone for something. Franich described seasons 3 and 4 as relentless, seasons 6's ending having a killer 1-2 punch, while seasons 7 and 8 were indifferent. Sex and violence. Despite its otherwise enthusiastic reception by critics, some have criticized the show for the amount of female nudity, violence, and sexual violence it depicts, and for the manner in which it depicts these themes. The Atlantic called the series' tendency to ramp up the sex, violence, and, especially, sexual violence of the source material the defining weakness of the adaptation. George R.R. Martin responded that he feels obliged to be truthful about history and human nature, and that rape and sexual violence are common in war, and that omitting them from the narrative would have rung false and undermined one of his novel's themes, its historical realism. HBO said that they fully support the vision and artistry of Dan and David's exceptional work, and we feel this work speaks for itself. The amount of sex and nudity in the series, especially in scenes that are incidental to the plot, was the focus of much of the criticism aimed at the series in its first and second seasons. Stephen Delane, who portrays Stannis Baratheon, likened the series' frequent explicit scenes to German porn from the 1970s. Charlie Jane Anders wrote in IO9 that while the first season was replete with light-hearted sexposition, the second season appeared to focus on distasteful, exploitative, and rehumanizing sex with little informational content. According to the Washington Post's Anna Holmes, the nude scenes appeared to be aimed mainly at titillating heterosexual men, right down to the Brazilian waxes sported by the women in the series' faux medieval setting, which made these scenes alienating to other viewers. The Huffington Post's Maureen Ryan likewise noted that Game of Thrones mostly presented women naked, rather than men, and that the excessive random boobage undercut any aspirations the series might have to address the oppression of women in a feudal society. Saturday Night Live parodied this aspect of the adaptation in a sketch that portrayed the series as retaining a 13-year-old boy as a consultant whose main concern was showing as many breasts as possible. In the third season, which saw Theon Greyjoy lengthily tortured and eventually emasculated, the series was also criticized for its use of torture. New York Magazine called the scene torture porn. Madeline Davis of Jezebel agreed, saying, "It's not uncommon that Game of Thrones gets accused of being torture porn, senseless, objectifying violence combined with senseless, objectifying sexual imagery." According to Davis, although the series' violence tended to serve a narrative purpose, Theon's torture in The Bear and the Maiden Fair was excessive. A scene in the fourth season's episode Breaker of Chains, in which Jaime Lannister rapes his sister and lover Cersei, triggered a broad public discussion about the series' depiction of sexual violence against women. According to David Scoff of the New York Times, the scene caused outrage, in part because of comments by director Alex Graves that the scene became consensual by the end. Itzkoff also wrote that critics fear that rape has become so pervasive in the drama that it is almost background noise, a routine and unshocking occurrence. Sonia Saraya of the AV Club wrote that the series' choice to portray this sexual act, and a similar one between Daenerys Targaryen and Khal Drogo in the first season, both described as consensual in the source novels, as a rape appeared to be an act of exploitation for shock value. In the fifth season's episode Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken, Sansa Stark is raped by Ramsay Bolton. Most reviewers, including those from Vanity Fair, Salon, The Atlantic, and the Daily Beast, found the scene gratuitous and artistically unnecessary. For example, Joanna Robinson, writing for Vanity Fair, said that the scene undercuts all the agency that's been growing in Sansa since the end of last season. In contrast, Sarah Stewart of the New York Post wondered why viewers were not similarly upset about the many background and minor characters who'd undergone similar or worse treatment. In response to the scene, pop culture website The Mary Sue announced that it would cease coverage of the series because of the repeated use of rape as a plot device, and U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill said that she would no longer watch it. As the 6th and 7th seasons saw Daenerys, Sansa, and Cersei assume ruling positions, Alyssa Rosenberg of The Washington Post noted that the series could be seen as a long-arc revenge fantasy about what happens when women who have been brutalized and raped gain power, namely, that their past leaves them too broken to do anything but commit brutal acts in their own turn, and that their personal liberation does not affect the social change needed to protect others from suffering. Time reported before the 7th season that even I,